Okay, so a major attack has just rocked the Middle East. A leader who's been in power for decades is killed, and suddenly the whole world is on edge. The question on everyone's mind is what happens now? Are we looking at a foreign invasion of Iran, or could the country implode from the inside out? Let's break down what's really going on.
So, here's the headline that set this all off. After 37 years in power, Iran's supreme leader was killed. And according to sources, this was a joint U.S.-Israeli military operation. You can imagine an act like this, well, it's lit a firestorm of retaliation and speculation across the globe.
The headlines are screaming about a potential World War III, right? But the reality? It's a bit more complicated. You see, this conflict is really being fought on two totally different fronts. There's the overt war, the one with missiles and strikes, and then there's the covert one, a war of messages for hearts and minds.
So first up, let's really unpack this idea of a two-front war. Because to get what's happening, you absolutely have to look at both the physical attacks and the psychological ones.
Okay, so what's the official story from the U.S.? They say the attack is about promoting democracy and, of course, stopping Iran's nuclear program. But if you dig a little deeper, the underlying strategic goal seems to be something else entirely: regime change. The idea is to install a pro-American government which would fundamentally shift the entire balance of power in the Middle East.
And this is where it gets really fascinating. You know, while all the missile strikes are grabbing the headlines, the most critical attacks might just be the ones we can't see. We're talking about the invisible battle for public opinion inside Iran. And that could be the real endgame here.
So how are they doing it? Well, Israel is reportedly waging this incredibly sophisticated information war. They're allegedly hacking mobile phones all across Iran, sending messages directly to soldiers telling them to surrender, and to civilians urging them to rise up. And at the exact same time, clips of Iranians celebrating the attack are being pushed hard in Western media, all to build this narrative of an internal collapse.
So are people actually celebrating? The answer is yes, some are. But it's nowhere near as simple as the information war might make it look. To really understand why, we have to look at the harsh realities of daily life for a lot of people in Iran. For years now, ordinary Iranians have been suffering under these crippling economic sanctions. We're talking about food price inflation hitting nearly 60% and just widespread unemployment. Now you compound that economic pain with the strict enforcement of social laws. I mean, think about the death of Mahsa Amini in custody, allegedly for not wearing her hijab properly. Incidents like that have sparked massive protests, revealing this really deep resentment toward the regime. This quote on the screen, it just gets right to the heart of the matter for the people who are protesting. For them, this isn't about geopolitics. It's about survival. They've experienced hunger, they've felt depression, and for some, this crisis represents a potential, maybe desperate, chance for freedom. But here's the thing. Iran is far from collapsing. The regime responded to the attack with immediate and widespread force, which has pulled the entire region, and really the whole world, even deeper into this conflict. And the retaliation was incredibly fast. I mean, within just 1 hour, Iran launched strikes against at least 7 different countries. The targets included U.S. military bases in places like Saudi Arabia and Qatar, but there were also reports of strikes near civilian hubs like Dubai. It was a clear demonstration of both their capability and their resolve. So with countries like the UK, France, and Germany now vowing to retaliate against Iran, that fear of a world war feels very real. But a full-blown global conflict still seems pretty unlikely, and it's for one really important reason. Here's the crucial point. Iran's most powerful allies, Russia and China, are only offering verbal support. Yeah, they're condemning the attack, but they are not committing any military forces. As one source put it, they are only talking, not taking action. And without two massive opposing military blocs, a true world war scenario is just not in the cards. It's more like a multinational coalition against a single state. But even if we avoid a war, the economic fallout could be just as devastating for everyone. See, Iran has a huge amount of influence over the Strait of Hormuz. It's this narrow channel that a staggering 20% of the entire world's oil supply passes through. And that strategic choke point is now a war zone. And the impact? It was immediate. In the first 48 hours of this conflict, global crude oil prices shot up by over 10%. That kind of instability means higher gas prices and rising inflation for all of us, no matter where we happen to live. So all of this brings us back to that final question. What's the most likely outcome for Iran? Is it going to be taken over by an external force, or is it going to collapse from within? Well, there seem to be two main paths. A full-scale U.S. ground invasion, that seems pretty unlikely. There's just not much public appetite for it in America, and the risk to troops would be huge. The second path, internal implosion, well, that's the whole point of the information war. But honestly, despite the protests and the dissent, the Iranian regime's control still appears to be very strong, at least for now.
So, as this whole conflict evolves, it raises a much larger and, frankly, more unsettling question about global power. When a single power can exert this much influence and kind of bully the world, who is truly safe? That's a question with no easy answer.